Right, so this is looking yellow-green to me. We can also see that on the parade. This might pose a challenge. Whilst the skin looks great here, everything else looks wrong, so we're probably going to have to do some secondary work to fix this. Okay, I've also missed placing this in a group, so I will fix that just now. And I will just copy and paste this grade into group pre-clip. As I said, very easy mistake to make. Yeah. So now we need to go through and sort our colour out. We've got a weird greeny yellow tint in everything. Okay, you know what, let's start this one again. Every now and again, things don't work out quite as you'd like. We just hit this reset button here, then we can start again, so we'll give that another go. Let's try dealing with the shadows first. Okay, if I try and balance that out, that's not going to work. That's going to hit the skin and things will go wrong. Let's go back to... Okay, we've got a lot of work to do on this one. This is one of the more challenging shots. Okay, we're probably going to have to rely on secondaries to get the rest of this done, so let's see what we can do. Let's cluster these up. That's our primary. Now we'll move on to secondary and we'll try and get the blue stuff sorted here. Got a bit of moire pattern going down there, which is not ideal. We might have to deal with that later. Right, let's see how well we do. Oh dear, okay. Okay, we can probably key out this wall quite easily. All we need to do is combine that with the garbage mat. This is a pretty static shot, so a shape will be quite simple. And now, there we go, we can make that conform. Cool. Okay, it may be better not to grade these shots in a group and maybe to grade them individually, as we're probably going to need to track things here, but we'll see how far we can get. We've got bits of obvious chatter on these arrows, we need to fix that. Okay, I think we're going to, we get a point where she leans in and we start to get a bit of chatter here. So let's just see if we can do that without having to animate a shape. I doubt it. What we'll also do is we'll soften it up a fair amount. Now we start to get a halo around here. Okay, that's fine. That means that this shape isn't going to benefit from being in a group, or this shot isn't going to benefit from being in a group, and we have to grade it individually. That's okay. We'll just copy and paste this back into the clip part, and we know that we've got a bit of manual, well, a bit of very light rotoscoping to take care of here. That's fine. We'll cover that. We're going to leave that there. that's a pretty good place for it to be in first pass. We might actually just do a bit of work on the suit there to make it blue, actually. But we'll go ahead and we'll do that animation in the second pass. Again, we're getting things into roughly the right place now. When we show this to the client, we'll say, look, this is what we're going for. There's some animation to finish here, but in these frames you can see that's the look. We're going to make it clear that we're not delivering it to them with a great big halo visible. So then the next thing to do is to see if we can work on the suit. We're going a little bit HSL heavy here. What we don't want is for, obviously it's quite blue there, and it's completely black there, so we need to try and fix that. This might take a while. Okay, this is going to be loose. We're not going to push this too far, seeing how loose our secondary is. And we're going to keep a close eye on this hand down here, although it's barely in. Okay, and let's just compare that. In fact, that might be a little bit over the top, so we're just going to bring our correction back. That's actually a pretty good match there. It doesn't need to be extreme. We're just getting that kind of blue feel, and now we've got a nice bluey warm here. So I'm happy for that to be our first pass. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a flag on here, and it's going to let me know that I'm going to need to manually keyframe or animate a property in this to sell the look. And in my parlances, I use the cyan flag to signify that. Cyan, to me, means requires manual rotoscoping or keyframing or animation of some kind. So now, I'm going to go ahead to the next version of this shot. Where has it gone? There she is. And I'm just going to copy it across and put a cyan flag on that, so I know that I then need to fix that and do some manual animation to fix the look there. Now there's a distinction I'm drawing between something which I know I'm going to put a face vignette on afterwards as a matter of kind of common practice, and something that definitely needs rotoscoping in order to succeed, and that's what the cyan flag means. It doesn't mean I'm going to track just any old thing like I would expect to in a lot of cases. It means that I know there's specific rotoscoping or animation required in order to fix a key issue. So now we can go on and we can just double check. Now this shot takes other corrections very well. What we can do is we can copy a grade in here, and we can then start to make adjustments to make that work. The shadows are very strong and yellow here, more so than in our board director's shot. So whilst this gets us a good measure of the way there, I'll just take that off for the time being. That gets us a good measure of the way there. There's still a fair amount of work to do, so we're going to go back. We'll just cluster these up as well. We'll go back into our primaries. Our shadows here are very, very yellow, and we can see just how yellow this bloke is in the background. What we might be tempted to do here is use the log wheels. If we hit with just the primaries, it's going to tint the rest of the image, and we don't want that. The log wheels are accurate enough for us to deal with this. We know it's only a certain region of the shadows which are very yellow. So what we'll do is I'm eyeballing it and saying anything below a quarter of maximum brightness looks like the issue to me. So I'm going to put my lower range down. So I'm going to put my lower range down and then see how close I can get. And that's getting closer. That's too high, so it's probably around 0.28. And there's just a bit of an awkward dance to do here. Okay, and what I might also be tempted to do on the same node is pull a little bit of colour out of the shadows as well. You might notice I drag things up beforehand, before I drag them down, and that just helps me see if I've made a correct a qualification using this curve that's accurate enough. It's easier for me to see brighter colours than it is to see things lose their colour. So I do this, and then, okay, I know I've got the right region I'm working with. Okay, now let's make the correction. That's why I do that, if you're wondering. Okay. That's getting pretty close. There's still a little bit of blue here. Our clear focus is our contributor here. I just want to make sure this guy isn't completely out of whack, but you can see the problem is here he's kind of all right, and then he walks right into a practical spot there, which is tungsten, and he goes very, very yellow. So tell you what I might do in that case. I might make an outside node from our skin key, Alt and O, and now I might just bring the yellows outside of the skin key down ever so slightly. What I don't want to do is lose too much of the wood, but I kind of just want to bring that tungsten spill back under control. Let's just double check. Okay, that's fine, that's a good match. We can also see our time of day has changed. Our background there isn't quite as bright, but that's okay. I'm not going to blow that out deliberately because our focus here is our contributor, and as long as she's a good enough match, that's fine. One thing I should go over, you might be seeing things like this. Resolve previews the grade of the still if you mouse over it. So this would be essentially the grade being applied twice in a row, which obviously would be pretty extreme. That's why we're seeing this weird kind of colour. It's not to say that that's what I've done at any point. But if I mouse over something else, let's say if I go back to LD and I mouse over this, it will show you what would happen if we were just to kind of layer the grade in the still on top of what we already have. So that's why we're seeing that. Maybe she needs a face vignette and maybe a little bit more colour in the skin. So I might just go back to the skin key, make sure I'm back in primary wheels again, and just crank that up slightly. And I might be tempted just to shift some of the yellow hues closer to red. She's looking a little bit orange and yellow to me. There we go. Maybe that's still a little bit on the pink side. Cool. And then with the face vignette, I can bring that in closer. Last thing to do. Go back to the curve. I might just bring the highlights on her shirt back under control. There we go. We don't want the shirt to steal focus from her. Maybe I will bring some of those shadows down, and I will bring our mids up slightly. Just increase the contrast a bit, and there we go. Right, that's a good place for first pass, and we'll move on to the next shot. So like I said, we're doing quite a lot of detailed work, but we're not getting everything absolutely perfect. We're not, making loads and loads of rotoscoped masks and everything. All the really detailed stuff comes back in second pass. Once we get this sorted, we'll send it off to our client, and then they'll feedback, and we can start to incorporate that into our working process now, instead of, like I said, basically finishing a project and then going back and changing everything, which just wastes so much time. So we're making nice progress, but we've got plenty of time left to go. This will take a good few hours yet, so we're just going to keep on going. Now feel free to progress at your own rate if you want, or watch this all through and work along. It's entirely your choice. This is a demonstration of how I would approach a professional contract. So now we're going to see if we can make use of everything. That's a nice start, but the hair is a little bit fearsome here. Cool. In that case, what I'm going to want to do... These are the blues, aren't they? Is that the blue? Is that the skin? No, that's skin. Okay. I'm going to want to just make a bit of a secondary to bring down this colourful highlight on the hair, which looks a little bit off, and maybe these orange regions in the background as well, and that's going to be HSL most likely. And we can blur that right down. That looks a bit messy. It's going to be a slight adjustment inside, so it's okay. And we're not going to bring it right down. We're just going to tone that down a little bit so that it fits in with everything else, and about 45 should be okay. And that's just taken that little bit of an odd glow off. That's in a pretty good place now. We maybe have some halos of green around there, so let's go back and check our curves. Cool. First pass, I'm pretty happy with that. And we shall move on. Let's just check. Cool, a little bit more of a match to go between those two. We'll pick that up in the second pass. We'll keep moving. Like I said, and like I keep on saying, and like I will continue to keep on saying, we're not finishing the grade in this pass. We're getting it into a good position. We're basically showing the client what we're doing and getting it into a good position that we can display. Oh, it's me cracking my fingers. We're then just getting it into a good place and then showing the clients they can give us feedback. So we're going to keep going. Now we have a choice to make with this contributor. Do we want to try and force his grey jacket to be blue? We could try. We're on quite a tight schedule with this one. Let's say we've got a single working day to turn this all around to a high-end final pass. That's about 8 hours in a working day, and the client's also going to need it to be uploaded to them as well, so we have to factor that in. On balance, with the time we have, I wouldn't throw loads of time away on this jacket, because keying neutral and darker colours especially is very difficult, because they're very often a broad range of hues with a very low saturation value. So we'll just try, let's just paste this on, and then we'll try quickly to key out this jacket. So now you see when I try and key out this grey jacket, it's almost every hue at the same time, but with a very low saturation value. This makes colours like this quite difficult to key out accurately. So if I'm going to make his jacket blue, it's probably going to be a rotoscoping job, and I don't want to throw time away doing that, to be frank. So I'm okay with his jacket being grey. I think it's clear and obvious that his jacket is grey and not just the wrong colour in the grade. We also don't want the vignette on the left-hand side. One danger when you copy-paste grades along is that you keep a bit like inaccurate vignettes along. You need to keep an eye out for that. We don't want the face vignette. We don't want that vignette on the left-hand side. Okay, so this is looking all right. It's a bit dark. We can go to our last node and we can just sort that out. We can bring our mids up. I might want to do the same thing we did. Oops, wrong area. I might want to do the same thing I did before. Hold Alt and O and make an outside node. And just bring the yellow down a little bit. Try and maintain some neutrality in these columns, and try and make it so that this guy's not so crazy in the background. So that's getting there, and then what we can try and do is just cool down the shadows a touch. As we do that, our grey jacket's taking on a slightly blue tint. That's okay, that makes it fit in better, but we're not going to make a secondary for the jacket. And fix that. Okay, and what I might do, he's looking a little bit yellow. I might just shift some of the yellow hues up ever so slightly. It's very slightly. Like maybe by a value of 1. There we go. Just bring out the colour in there. Okay. Primary cleanup, and then what we'll do is we'll reinstate a new vignette on the right hand side. Now he's pretty vertical. He's not as diagonal as the board director was, so we won't make the shape we're doing here as diagonal. There we go. It's not quite as colourful. Maybe we could go and we could bring the blues up a smidge. But I want to be careful that this door doesn't look daft. Okay, that's pretty good. Could use a bit more work, but it's good enough for first pass. So we'll save and we'll move on. So around this point in a project you might feel like taking a break. I would recommend that. We'll save. As a general rule of thumb, every 2 hours you work in the grade you should take a 10 or a 15-minute break in natural sunlight if possible. Our eyes have a kind of natural white balance function, then we slowly come to see the image we're looking at as neutral even when it's not. Because of this, it can cause problems if you're grading in long haul shifts because you kind of lose your point of reference. So it's very important to go out and basically reset your eyes, come back to it with eyes more acclimatized to the way the world actually looks, and then you might be surprised if you've worked for a very long shift and you go out for a break in sunlight and you come back, you might be surprised at just how out of whack some of your work can be. It happened to me a lot when I was first starting out, because obviously you think, no, I don't need to take a break, because I don't need to, I'm fine. But you do need to take a break in natural sunlight to reset your eyes' white balance so that you maintain a proper natural perspective on the work that you're doing. So at this point I would say, it's not quite been 2 hours yet, but what the hell, go out, take a 10-minute break in natural sunlight if at all possible. If it's nighttime or if it's gone dark where you are, then take a break anyway. Try and look at something which is quite natural. Try and look at something illuminated that's not illuminated by strong orange tungsten light if at all possible. If it's not, just take a break and relax for 10 minutes and come back. Right, I'm going to assume that you took a break just then, so we will move on. Okay, back to it. We've got this close-up to deal with, and some of our pre-existing grades get us pretty close. I'd say we can probably start with this one, and that is pretty good. We don't always just make a straight copy across. In this case that appears to be okay. We're getting some clipping. We might just bring that down a little bit on our primary node at the start. That's a pretty good match. That might need to be brought down a little bit now that we're looking at it. Might just need to bring the mids down ever so slightly. Cool. That's pretty good, and of course we've done these to first pass, so we'll go to the next contributor. Ah, this guy's not in the right clip. Right, in the right group, actually. So we'll add him. He should be short-haired man 1 mid. There we go. If we happen to miss any of these when making our groups, it's quite easy to fix that. Okay, so we have our last batch of contributors back here. This one's probably going to need a bit more work. This wall was a little bit awkward last time. Okay, none of our previous looks are really appropriate there, so we'll go at this one from scratch. So let's get started. Right, so let's get started. Okay, let's get our primary balance done. That's looking pretty good. Let's just balance up our shadows here. And our highlights. Got a little bit of a clipping highlight there. We'll just bring that back down, back under control. We might just bring our saturation up further. Cool, that's getting in a pretty nice place already. I think we can do something quite good here just with a few curves. So let's go on to Hue v Hue. And we'll sort out our green and cyan. Let's bring our vector scope up again. We can see what we're doing. Okay, we want to be careful of that cheese plant in the background there. It's got a bit of a funny colour. And we're getting some odd yellowy green effects over there. Why might that be? Okay, we have some pre-existing strong green. Okay, that means that the yellows. And that's blue. Okay. Right, we're unlikely to fix all of that with a single curve adjustment then. But we can get that pretty close. We've got a nice set of blues here. We'll see if we think the plant is a problem when we do our Hue v Sat. That's quite nice. That's quite a nice clean look. Now the blue wall there isn't quite as blue as it was before. It's down to us as to whether or not we think that's a big problem. I quite like having details like that match, and this is quite simple. I would do that in second pass because it requires a bit of a manual track. So what we'll do is we'll put a cyan flag on there, and I'll just track a garbage matte to that wall and make it a bit bluer later on. That's fine. Some green details in the background there, so let's see if we can try and fix those. Try and take care of this kind of green noise. Then what we might just do is try and just make those blue. Now that's going to hit the plank quite badly, but we can constrain that with a garbage mat. Let's just make sure we haven't introduced any other serious issues, but that's now... Okay, that's made some stuff here, so let's just... There we go. What we'll do is we'll blur that right out to hide the joins. Okay. Down here, that's done quite a nice job of hiding it. Up in the wall, if we look closely, it's made kind of a weird patchy effect. So maybe if we just tone that down a smidge. That's okay. That's hit the wall there, but it's also hit the plant. I'm just going to put a static garbage mat over that and keep it to our kind of right-hand side. I don't want it to interfere with other things because I only really had that side in mind when I did that. Come on. And that's fine. Right, just one last thing to take care of. This band on the cube back there is very strong and saturated and is a little bit distracting, so we'll just make a secondary around that. It's quite a distinct colour. It should be quite easy to key out through a combination of choosing the darker hues and the higher saturations.